Hello English learners! In today's video we are going to learn how to talk about movies like a native English speaker. So we're going to talk about the different elements of movies, the different genres, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with a lot, but some you might not be so familiar with, and also different ways to describe a movie. So if that sort of topic interests you, keep watching. So the plot is the basic storyline of the movie. These are the events that make up the story. So if somebody asks you, what was the plot of a particular film, you could just give a summary of the events that occurred. So if a plot twist occurred, this means that there was a big change from what you thought was going to happen in the movie, or what you were actually led to believe was going to happen in the movie. So let's say there is a movie about a couple who are very much in love and they want to get married, and then all of a sudden, the woman decides she doesn't want to get married and she marries a complete stranger in Fiji. That was a pretty big plot twist. That was not what we were led to believe was going to happen. It's a very big change in the plot. So we know that movies are made up of different parts. A particular part of a movie we call a scene. So a scene is usually just one activity that occurs in a movie, and it's usually just in one location. So you could say, did you see the scene in the movie where the kid got into a fight with his brother? So that was just one activity and in one location. It was a scene. So sometimes movies are based on true events or based on books. This just means that the movie was created with that book or those true events in mind. So if a movie was based on a book, it might have the same plot, it might have some of the same characters. The book inspired that movie. And then we have another phrasal verb to talk about movies, and it is set in. So if a movie is set in a particular place, that means that the story of the movie happens in that location, or sometimes we use set in to describe a particular time period. So I could say that the movie To Catch a Thief was set in the French Riviera during the mid-20th century. So I just told you when the story occurred and also where the story occurs or where it's set. So when you're watching a movie, you'll see a list of the names of the people who worked on this film. These are called the credits. Sometimes they may occur in the beginning of the film, usually in older films, but more recent films, they occur after the film. These are the credits. So perhaps a book or a play was changed a little bit so that we could put it into the form of a movie. This is called an adaptation, in particular a film or movie adaptation. So we could say that the movie A Raisin in the Sun was an adaptation of the play A Raisin in the Sun. It was changed a little bit so that it could be in the form of a film. So one of my favorite all-time movies is called Dumb and Dumber, but I didn't really like the sequel too much. What's a sequel? So a sequel is a movie that continues the storyline of another movie. So Dumb and Dumber was the first movie to come out, and the second one, the sequel, came out almost 10 years later, which I didn't like. Similarly, we have a prequel. And we know that we can sometimes figure out the meaning of words by looking at prefixes. So we have the prefix pre in prequel, which means before. So a prequel tells the events that occurred before a particular movie. So maybe you have heard of the movie The Planet of the Apes, which is about a planet that is controlled by apes and that has human servants. A famous prequel of that movie is The Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and this came out after, but it tells the story of the events that led to us having a planet controlled by apes. Next up on our list is a trilogy, and a trilogy is a group of 3 similar movies. Sometimes they have the same name, same director, same actors. So an example could be the Godfather franchise, which contains The Godfather Part 1, 2, and 3, a trilogy. So if you are an English learner, which I assume you are because you are here, sometimes you might use subtitles when you are watching movies. Subtitles are just those words that usually appear on the bottom of the screen that translate the movie into a different language. So you might use Spanish subtitles if your native language is Spanish, if you are watching a movie that is in Japanese. Similarly, we have closed captions. Closed captions are also words that appear usually on the bottom of a screen, sometimes at the top, but they are usually in the same language that the movie is in, and they are for people who are hearing impaired, people that can't hear so well. We call those closed captions. So I am a very indecisive person, and usually if I'm trying to figure out whether I want to watch a movie, I might ask someone who I know that has already seen the movie, what's the premise of the movie? So a premise is usually no longer than a couple sentences, and it describes the main idea of the movie. So if you were to describe the premise of the film Beauty and the Beast, you might say, a handsome prince is forced to live the life of an ugly beast until he finds his one true love. A protagonist is the most important person in the movie. Usually the protagonist is the one that has the big problem in the movie. So if you can think of the movie The Lion King, we would say Simba is the protagonist. He's the main character. The story revolves around him. He has the big issue in the movie that needs to be worked out. And then we have the antagonist. The antagonist is like the enemy. The antagonist opposes the protagonist. So in The Lion King, the antagonist is Scar. He kind of creates the problem for Simba, who is the protagonist. So the storyline revolves around the problems that the antagonist creates and the protagonist is trying to solve. Next, we have a trailer. So I usually like to watch trailers before I decide to watch a full-length film. So a trailer is a short video, usually no longer than 2 or 3 minutes, that is an advertisement for a future movie. So they just pick particular scenes to show people, to get people interested in watching a film. Next, we have the word a spoiler. A spoiler is something that reveals what happens in a movie. So maybe you are reading an article online about a film, and then before the actual article, you see the word spoiler alert. This means that in the article, they will spoil the movie. They will tell you some of the events that actually happened in that movie. So now I'd like to discuss different words and phrases that native English speakers use to describe films. So as a non-native English speaker, you might find some American films to be hard to follow. Maybe they're using too many colloquialisms, slang, advanced vocabulary words. Maybe they're speaking too quickly. So we sometimes use that phrase, hard to follow, to describe films that are hard to understand. And next we have this informal verb, to flop. So we use this phrase, to flop, to describe movies that are terrible or much worse than we had expected them to be. So maybe you were really excited to watch the new superhero movie and you were disappointed because it just totally flopped. It was terrible. So I'm sure you've been in a situation where your friends or your family are telling you to watch a movie and they're telling you it is so good, it's the best movie of the year, and blah, blah, blah. And then you go to watch the movie and you're pretty excited to watch it because you've heard such good things about it. But then you watch it and you're just wondering why your friends and family were saying so many good things about it, because it was not that amazing. Maybe you even disliked it. You could say that movie was overhyped. This just means that the movie was given way too much praise than it actually deserved. It's not as good as everyone is saying it is. What's a movie that you think was overhyped? Let me know in the comments. And next we have the term raunchy. This describes a movie that was overly sexual and offensive maybe to some people. So you might think a movie has a good plot and you like the characters, but it might be a little too raunchy for you. Or perhaps you like the raunchiness. So it can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on who's watching it. Maybe if you are with small children, you don't want to watch a raunchy film. And then we have the adjective gory. Its noun form would be gore, but gory describes a film that has lots of blood and violence. So you can think of the Nightmare on Elm Street films or the Freddy Krueger films. Those films have lots of blood. They're very gory. They are gore-filled. Lots of different phrases for you. A tearjerker is a film that is very sad and makes people cry. What is a film that you have seen that is a tearjerker? Let me know in the comments. So I'm always happy when a movie keeps me on the edge of my seat. This means that the movie is keeping my attention. It's very interesting. I want to know what happens next. I'm sitting on the edge of my seat. And then we have this phrase to push the envelope. So to push the envelope can be used in many different instances, but quite often it's used to describe movies. So to push the envelope means to go beyond what is expected, to try something new and different. Sometimes it involves taking a risk. So the director Quentin Tarantino is often described as a director who pushes the envelope. So he often highlights controversial topics or includes dark humor in his movies. So dark humor is comedy that makes light of usually taboo or serious topics. And Quentin Tarantino uses dark humor often in his films. So the Quentin Tarantino film Django Unchained can be described as a film that pushes the envelope because it takes very serious topics like slavery and racism, but he adds elements of humor to this film, even though the subject matter is very serious to people. He is taking a risk, doing something that others have not done before, pushing the envelope. You might hear a critic describe a film as an instant classic. An instant classic is a film that, when it's released, it is so good that people realize that it will be well-liked even into the future. I remember when I was in high school and I first saw the movie Avatar, I was like, wow, the special effects are great. I love the storyline. This is going to be an instant classic, meaning that even in the future, everyone will love this movie, Avatar. And next we have this collocation, critically acclaimed. And a critically acclaimed movie receives lots of praise. People generally give it good reviews. They generally like this movie. So we could say the movie Gone with the Wind has received much critical acclaim, or that it is critically acclaimed. And then we have this collocation, star-studded. So a star is a famous performer. So if a film is star-studded, it means there are many different famous stars in that film. I just recently saw the film Coming to America 2, and as I was watching, I could just point out, I don't know, maybe 20 different famous people just in that one movie. It is a star-studded film. Then we have this phrase, a box office success. So if a movie was a box office success, it means that many people bought tickets to see this movie. It did well in the box office. And if we say a movie did well in the box office, it means that that movie made lots of money. Literally, the box office is the place at the movie theater where you go to buy your tickets. Then we have this common phrase, the big screen. And the big screen is that screen that you see at a movie theater. So we can say that Thomas always could see himself on the big screen, meaning he could always see himself as being a star in the movies that you would see at a movie theater. And then we have this phrase that is kind of an old-fashioned phrase called the silver screen. And this describes movies in general or the movie industry. So we could say that she never really saw herself as being a star of the silver screen. She never saw herself as being a movie actress in the movie industry. And now I'm just going to quickly show you the different genres of movies that you might see. One is a Western. So Westerns are those movies that take place usually in the old American West. And they have saloons, cowboys. You can think of shows like Gunsmoke, which actually isn't a movie, but it's a Western show. Or the actor John Wayne. He was very famous for being in those Western type films. And then we have indie films, which many people include as its own genre. An indie film is short for an independent film, and this just means that the film was not created by a major studio. Usually their budgets are much lower as well, but not always. Then we have this apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic genre, which is one of my favorite genres. And this is a genre of movies that describes the end of the world or what happens after the destruction of the world or some very cataclysmic event. So when we think of this, we can think of films like Mad Max, or we can think of this movie, A Quiet Place, which describes life after an alien invasion of Earth. A coming-of-age film is a film that centers around a child growing up. So maybe it's a child becoming a teenager, or a teenager becoming an adult. Usually the child becomes wiser or learns some sort of lesson during the movie. They're in some sort of transition. And then we have slasher films. These are films where people are murdered in very violent ways. So you can think of the movie The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is a classic slasher film. And then we have a chick flick. It describes a movie that stereotypically a lot of women might watch. So maybe they're romantic comedies or something of that nature. A flick is a slang word for a movie. So that's why they call them chick flicks. Next we have a parody. A parody is a film that is similar to another movie or imitates certain parts of another movie in a kind of funny way. They are making fun of that other movie to entertain an audience. So we could say the scary movie franchise films are parodies of scary movies released during that time period. They make fun of those scary movies by imitating certain aspects of those scary movies. That is the end of our video on ways to talk about movies in English. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if it was useful, do not forget to leave me a like, subscribe to this channel if you want more English lessons, and until next time, English learners.